Hey everyone, Willie Clark here. Welcome to another lovely episode of Voices of Valyria, 8-Bit Awesome podcast. As always, my co-host, Timothy.
Hi, I'm back.
He's back. He survived. We both survived the past year, which is crazy.
What have you been doing for a year? I don't know what I've been doing for a year. I'm pretty sure I've just been in a basement.
Yeah. Well, they don't have basements in California, really. That's not a thing with all the shaking and the state falling off, into the ocean and
I
floating.
heard that you guys have no water. Is that true?
I mean, yeah, we've actually invented something called H2O2.
That's hydrogen peroxide. I think you have
Shit. I knew. I was like, God, as soon as I started making that joke, I was like, I know I can't make this joke with Tim around because he's gonna.
That's not exactly the safest stuff to be drinking.
So anyways, I've been busy. We've had the 8-Bit Awesome Games podcast has still been going. I'm doing more freelance stuff than ever. Tim has some. Hopefully, we'll have some exciting things that he'll be able to share with people soon. But he's had great success with his comics and your food stuff too, right, Tim?
Yeah, Smorgasdork is actually gaining some traction. We'll be doing our very first live streamed cooking show this Wednesday.
Yeah, awesome. So lots of busy stuff all over the place, but
it's a good time to be a nerd.
It is. Oh, that's very true. But I think we know why people are here. People are here for the blood, the boobs, and the dragons.
I thought they were here for our shining personalities, but I guess blood and boobs.
Well, both and that are also our personalities are shiny, just like Valyrian steel. That's where we got our name from. That's just how.
Voices of Valyria, just those dulcet tones.
Welcome to Voices of Valyria. This is the Voices of Valyria podcast. I am your host, generic NPR voice.
I do like the generic NPR voice. That guy can lull me to sleep every night.
No, that's true. But we don't want people to go to sleep. I think people are excited. I think people are pumped up about this episode. I think people are hyped for this season. But before we get into stuff, we do have a house cleaning note, a programming change, that I don't think will affect most people. If it does, yell at us. Tweet at us, comment, let us know. But,
social media is your friend, people.
Yeah, but if you've been following us for the past 2 seasons that we've been doing this, you'll know that we always split the podcast up into 2 sections. We had section 1, which was for people who just watched the TV show, and then we had section 2, which was for people who just watched, or who had read the books and watched the show.
Lo and behold, George R.R. Martin seems to have forgotten that he wrote books for a living.
Oof. Wow. Yeah. So essentially that's not really a problem anymore. Everything that's happening in the show is past the books at this point. That being said, there are some events, there are some things that have happened that could still happen, but that happened books ago in the books that the show hasn't done. Obviously there are differences, but those things don't really necessarily matter as much anymore because the show's kind of taking on its own life. All that to say, me and Tim have read all the books. We've got some other people who will be joining us this season as well, which we're really excited about, who are also book people. So to err on the side of caution, we're just saying that if you haven't read the books and you don't want to know what happens in that alternate universe that's different than what's happening on the show, just be cautious. We'll still have the same spoiler warning in front of every episode, but we're not going to have it split up into 2 sections anymore. And it's kind of just going to be a free-for-all because most of what we're going to be talking about isn't stuff that's happened in the books.
And let's be real. If you are a book reader or a show watcher and you're listening to this podcast, you probably just want to talk about the show.
Yeah, and I mean that's what we figured. And I mean that there are some big things that, we'll that we may just talk about, they may come up that we don't want to ruin for people, so we're warning them ahead of time.
So that's your warning.
Yes, so that's your warning. You've been warned. But we just think, if you're just a book reader and you don't want to be spoiled about the show, then you better hide, because
good luck for the next 3 years.
Yeah, good luck for the next 3 years. But this just seemed like the easier way to do things, and the way to do things that kind of makes everyone, we hope, happy. But again, if you disagree with us, then yell at us and let us know, and we'll, we can change. We're amenable to that.
Yeah.
We listen.
So, with that, let us dive in.
Season 6, Episode 1, The Red Woman.
That sounds like a Prince song waiting to happen. Yeah. I went there.
Too soon.
Never soon enough. So, where did we start off? I don't remember.
Yeah. So a lot of stuff happened in this episode. I want to start off with general impressions, Tim, because I think general stuff, and then then let's start general, narrow our way down.
All right.
So generally speaking, how'd you feel about this episode? What are your?
I personally felt as if this episode was kind of like a welcoming embrace from your mother after you've been gone away for, like, let's say 2 or 3 years in Africa. And you're just coming off the fact that you just saw a whole bunch of people die. There was a lot of death in the previous season. Some people that you really liked probably died last season, and they made sure that your mother made sure you remembered that as you started to hug her, and then as you began to hug her, she slowly shifted into a snarling beast, and now welcome back home, bitch.
Welcome back to Westeros.
Yeah, that was not your mom. That was actually a 3-headed dragon. But that's how I generally felt about this episode. I felt personally like it felt like a welcoming home, and then immediately stabs to the chest to remind you that this is Westeros. How about yourself?
Yeah, it was interesting because going in, I tried not to be too super hyped on it, because I feel like Thrones does a lot of things really, really well. And it tends to, if my memory for all of the seasons serves me correctly, it tends to start strong and end strong, and then it can get kind of murky in the middle. But when you go back and look at the history of the show, no one talks about episode 1s. You know what I mean? No one goes, oh, like when the big pivotal moments, Ned, the Red Wedding, all of these things, they all happen in the back half of the season. So I was trying to go in with somewhat tempered expectations of, this is the first episode of things to come. This is the first look into a brave new world, because it's the first time that the showrunners have essentially entered into a world that they're now completely in control of. I'm sure there's some limitations, but for all intents and purposes, they can do what they want with this story. And
it's interesting that you point that out, because I've after speaking to some people about this particular episode, I found that my friends had a lot more mixed views about this season opening. A lot of them are still hyped about the show, but they feel as if the fact that the showrunners now have the reins, that the show has become more predictable.
Well, okay.
Which is hard to say off of one episode, in my opinion. But
I think that's true, but I also, at the same time, I completely understand where they're coming from, because I did get some sense of that. And, in reading other people's reviews and talking to other people, there does seem to be some sense from people that, now the reins are let off D&D. Now they can kind of feel free to play in this world like they haven't been able to play before, which is true. But the thing I'm worried about is, I'm going to compare it to Community. It was really hard in season 4 of Community for the showrunners to emulate Dan Harmon. And so I think we're going to see something similar here in this season with Game of Thrones, where they're going to be emulating Martin, kind of, if that makes sense. And there were some things in this episode that were very worrisome where I was like, oh, guys, like, you're trying to be as clever as Martin is, but it's just not working. But it's early. Like, that fear is in the back of my mind, definitely. And especially because I think a lot of people left last season kind of bummed. Not just because of Jon, but I think season 5 is probably, if not the weakest, one of the weakest seasons the show did. And so I think because of that, and I think a lot of that had to do with them starting to fully realize their vision for this universe. So yeah, I understand that criticism and that worry going into this season, that them having free reign might not be the best for the show. It might not. I do think it's slightly premature for that criticism to sink in, given it's just been one episode. If I don't want to say next episode could completely change my mind and I could be like, okay, 2 episodes in, now it's time to say that. But I do think that fear is confounded. I definitely do.
Okay.
Particularly, I'm curious actually, what moments did they mention? Any specific moments that they thought were predictable?
Basically
everything.
Pretty much everything, except for the scene with Melisandre, but that was more that they had an inkling of that beforehand anyway.
Yeah.
Especially if you were ever one of those people that followed interviews of Game of Thrones cast members, the actress let it slip a couple of times.
Yeah. So I do want to talk to Melisandre. Before we get on that, though, I want to back up to what I thought was one of the more predictable moments, and I think, I don't know, the ending, the finale of last season just was not good. It was cliffhanger after cliffhanger after cliffhanger, needlessly. And so this season, I feel like a lot of the discussion around it has been, well, okay, it's quickly wrapped up everything that happened at the end of last season. And, one of those was with Brienne, and she's finally run into Sansa. Again, I shouldn't say finally. I should say she's finally convinced.
Trying to get to give that oath.
Yeah, she's finally convinced Sansa. And, I mean, that was my problem is, they're running around away from the dogs, and I'm like, oh, like, Brienne's going to show up, because that's what's going to happen. And then Brienne comes marching through the woods. And it was just, that was one of those moments where I was like, and Martin does this a lot, somewhat successfully at times, and somewhat unsuccessfully at others, with random character arcs running into each other.
I think the issue with this particular instance, though, is that when you have so many cliffhangers at the end of a season, and that all those cliffhangers are going to be resolved at the beginning of a season, you're just going to blow through them all.
Yeah.
Like, you like, with Jaime, with Brienne, with Jon, you basically are like, all right, well, next season we're just going to answer these 3 questions, and that will be your first episode.
Well, but they didn't answer all 3 of them.
No, that's true.
Jon's still on the table.
Jon, okay, is.
Let's talk about Jon. Let's talk about.
That's gonna be a while.
Yeah, let's get into Jon, because Jon is, and just to let people of the show know that this is the same cliffhanger that book readers have had for 6 or 7 years now, since Dance of Dragons came out. So all the criticism about the fake cliffhangers and all that they built up at the end of the last season are fair, with the exception of Jon, which is the same exact cliffhanger that Martin built into the books. And I don't know. Now I guess I don't think we got a definitive answer this episode. Are you convinced he's dead?
No, I'm not,
Yeah.
And I have a number of reasons why. Mainly for me is Sir Davos finds him in the snow. My first alarm bell that was like, hey, Jon's probably going to come back, is that Sir Davos finds him in the snow, as opposed to the traitors of the Night Watch like, all right, we stabbed him to death, let's leave him in the snow. Or, we could do what we do with anyone else we do, like when we stab somebody, we can throw them out off the wall. We can hide the body. Like, I don't think.
We can burn him.
Yeah, there was so many options of disposal of Jon Snow after you stab him. I don't think like Thorne was like, all right, now that we stabbed him, let's leave him here. He's not going anywhere.
Well,
We'll have Ollie pick up the garbage later.
well, that's an interesting point. That's something I hadn't thought of. I'm almost wondering if they left him there so people knew for a fact that he was dead. So there wasn't people going, "Oh, Jon's not actually dead. You know, he was abducted by the wildlings and he'll be back." So I'm wondering if there may have been a thought in Sir Alistair's head to leave the body there on purpose. Now this is conjecture, and we're kind of getting, we're assuming motivation on several levels of depth here.
Yeah, it's true. Like,
but that's a good point. Yeah.
I mean, there's also the fact that they bring him inside. He looks relatively fresh, and that Sir Davos like, oh, we have a red woman, and like, actually, I really like Sir Davos in this episode, but that's an aside.
Sir Davos, because I don't know if I've actually ever said this on the podcast before. Not in the show. He's okay in the show, but in the books, he is my absolute favorite character.
I think he's a lot of people's favorite character.
Sir Davos, yeah. Davos is the man. The Onion Knight for the win. But anyways, yeah. So Davos has gathered the few people who are still entirely loyal to Jon,
which turns out to be the first 5 people he sees.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And they're locked in a room with Jon's body. I don't really know what their plan is at this point. Like, they sent the wildlings to get help, but I mean, they're kind of on a ticking clock. Like, they know they have to
my gut reaction
do something with Jon fast, like burn him or something quickly. So,
yeah, my gut reaction is that they want, like, Jon's men, his loyalists, want to kill Thorne. That's like their one blindsided, like, they don't care whether or not they live or survive. Sir Davos is like, I don't think he has faith in the resurrection of Jon. I think he thinks that the Red Woman could do something, and that he will honor Jon Snow's death.
Yeah, I think Davos's thought is, and maybe I'm looking too much into this, but Davos seemed to hesitate for a moment, moving the body and staring at the blood, or the camera lingered. I don't remember which it was. And Davos knows King's blood. Now the thing is Davos doesn't really know that Jon, could be important. But that's, a theory that a lot of people believe in. So I don't know. I don't really know what his plan is, because, Melisandre's there, and...
Well, I think you have Sir Davos showing that he has faith in something, even whatever it is. He has, like, it's in the back of his head. Like, you can kind of see it. Like, he doesn't know what he's doing, but he's doing it on faith alone. Whereas Melisandre has lost her faith because Stannis is gone. His army's in shambles. She thought he was the warrior of light that was going to break apart the darkness. Mm-hmm. And then she's like, well, I saw Jon Snow, fighting for Winterfell. Like, I saw in the flames. And while she's having a crisis of faith, Davos is having, like, inklings of faith. And
interesting.
I think that's what's going to be kind of the impetus for what is going to occur on the wall, that Sir Davos is going to snap her out of it. And whatever she does next, whether it is, like, using a dungeon resurrection spell or some sort of, like, heal of wounds or graceful charity, referencing, like, 3 different games. I don't know what she's going to do, but I feel as if they're leading into something that she will be doing, and Davos will be kind of the impetus to that thing.
Well, and that would be a very interesting switch, because Davos, early on in the show, was very much the non-believer.
Yes.
In Melisandre and her powers. He was always the skeptic to Stannis' blind acceptance of her faith. And so for him to be the one, yeah, I could see that, him being the one that kind of reignites her fire, so to speak. Um, so before I do want to talk about Melisandre, but before we get to that, both Jon and Stannis. Jon, I mean, I've never been convinced that Jon was dead. I think the question is, or I think he's dead now. I don't think he's gone. The
I
question
think he'll be back. It's just a matter of what form he comes back.
exactly, and I do think it's interesting, and this actually reminds me. It's kind of it's kind of like Seinfeld. So in the Seinfeld, series finale, there were a whole bunch of rumors about what was going to happen, where they were going to, was everyone going to die, all this stuff, and so they worked all of that into the finale, where they almost had him die in like a plane crash and all this stuff. They were playing off what people thought, and so I just realized that this is the same thing the show is kind of doing. The threat of the white of him turning into a white is always in the background. They brought Wolf into the room, because that's another theory, is that he warged into Wolf. And they also have Melisandre right there. So the show, it's not, I don't know, it's not super hitting you over the head with it, but it seems on some level aware of the ideas that are floating around out there. I didn't think we were going to get a direct answer this episode. However, I don't think they can stretch it out.
I mean, he has a time clock for
Yeah.
how long his body's going to be useful.
And that's the thing. So I don't think they can stretch it out that long. I mean, if we don't see the Watch next episode, they could potentially stretch it out one more.
That seems like they're really pushing it, though.
Yeah, but any more than that, I think they're pushing it. And I mean,
so the three theories that I've seen thus far,
okay,
have been Jon Snow gets rezzed by the Lord of Light / Melisandre through some magical doohickeys. The next theory I saw is that Jon Snow turns into a White Walker.
Mm-hmm.
And the third is that what I've seen is that Bran learns from the three-eyed raven how to warg into corpses and assumes the persona of Jon Snow.
Whoa! I've never heard that one before.
Okay, so
that's interesting.
Yeah, that is a theory that I've not seen much of, but it is a very interesting theory because it puts together a couple of things.
Yeah, it does.
The first question becomes how would Bran warg into Jon without seeing Jon? The answer is the wirewood trees or ghost. The second, just seeing him through those places and then warging from the green site.
Mm-hmm.
The next question is does this fulfill any sort of prophecies? Well, someone did say that Bran would walk again at some point. I forget who it was.
Yeah, but wasn't it he would walk again only in his dreams?
Yeah, only in his dreams, which a possession would be dreams. And the next thing is the prince that was promised, and it was what was it, the horse rider that would mount the world, or the prince that would mount the world?
Yeah.
The idea of mounting the world has always thought of a great warrior on horseback, but the theory continues to say that what if they don't mean on horseback? What if they mean mount the world as in all the wirewood trees are connected and are wrapped around the world? And that is the mount.
I mean, there's definitely going to be some voodoo with Bran and the trees. That I think.
Oh, there's absolutely.
And I don't know. I'm not. That's not spoiling stuff for anyone because we don't know. We don't know what's happening in Bran's story.
These are all theories.
Yeah, Bran's story is past. Well, it's essentially past where it is in the books. It's like one chapter behind, but nothing happens in that chapter.
He hasn't gotten his acceptance letter from Hogwarts yet, if that's what you're asking.
Exactly. But he's going to get his acceptance letter. It's not a thing.
Oh, yeah. We just have to wait for it no post on Sundays, and then he gets his fucking letter. But I'm not sure. I definitely don't think Jon is dead. I will be surprised if he's dead. Will I be angry that if he's actually confirmed dead? No, because
Yeah,
honestly, they'll
I've never,
continue.
yeah, I've never cared that much for Jon either. So okay, so so we don't think he's dead. We think but you think we'll get a definitive answer soon? Because yeah, I don't think they can stretch it out.
It has to be in the next 1 or 2 episodes.
Yeah, that's what I
Like
thought
his
as well.
body becomes useless after a while, and the only one of those theories that works for a kind of corpsey, like broken down Jon Snow is White Walkers, and that that theory I was super behind until I like as a potential theory until I realized they ain't no White Walkers around. How long is it going to take for them to get there?
Well, yeah, that's true too.
I think my top theories are Lord of Light intervening or this brand theory that came out of nowhere.
Yeah, that Bran one's interesting. Yeah, because I mean, we've seen, he warged into Hodor.
And that was like a big deal in the books, and kind of glanced over.
Yeah. Yeah, the show did kind of glass it over. That's not a normal thing. Like, being able to warg into people is not normal.
And like Hodor, he was able to. The theory is that he was able to warg into Hodor because Hodor is what was the term that they use? He is simple-minded. Is that what they use?
Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah.
And that was always the theory of why he could ward into Hodor. But what's more simple-minded than a corpse?
That's
Ain't nothing
true.
there.
That's true. That's interesting.
So, speaking of corpses, that Dorne plot.
Oh God. So there were a couple surprises, and I mean, Game of Thrones is a show about surprises, and it is somewhat exciting, I guess, to be back on the side, of the side of the show where I don't know what's going to happen every week, and just because I think it's interesting, and to kind of debunk my book snobbery that I think sometimes I display. I didn't read the books until after I saw seasons 1, 2, and 3. Or I saw seasons 1 and 2 and then read books 1 and 2 and then saw season 3 and then read book 3 and then I think something like that. But anyway, so for a lot of this, like the Red Wedding and all that, I was seeing it in the show first. So I'm very much back there. And I do think that there were 2 twists, one being Dorne and Melisandre to a certain extent too, that were not grade A, going to go down in the Game of Thrones, history as big twists, but were things that people definitely didn't see coming.
There's also important in terms of like world building, but not important as in overall plot.
Yeah. And so here's my theory. Let's talk about Dorne. And so it's no secret, I mean, I think it's no secret at least, that the Dorne storyline has been handled vastly different than in the books. And in the books, Dorne is probably, I think, one of the more popular plot lines. It does come into the story late, but I enjoyed Dorne. You like the Sand Snakes. Like, you like some of the characters from Dorne who haven't been introduced into the show. And there's some really, really interesting political stuff going on in Dorne that can't be said for some of the other plot lines in books 4 and 5. And so the show has done its own take on it, and it was wildly unpopular last season. And I'm almost wondering if this is the end of Dorne for the show.
Yeah, I kind of got that feeling after they killed all the Martells.
Yeah, it almost seemed like, and I mean, the Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire Reddit and all that, like, aren't particularly happy about this. I mean, they weren't happy about a lot of stuff last season either, and I mean, I wasn't either. I'm not just them, but this doesn't necessarily track logically, because, you know, they were mad at the Martells for not doing anything because people were dying, so they just killed them. Like, and I can see that. The other big thing that someone pointed out, and I don't know if I didn't pick this up at first either, Tim, is that Trystane was on the boat to King's Landing.
Wait, what?
Last season. And the Sand Snakes were very much on the dock of the boat. Yep.
Okay.
Whoops. Whoops.
Whoops. How did they get on the boat?
Exactly. So that, and once I realized that, it made me think even more that this was not the original plan for Dorne. And this was okay, Dorne's not working. Let's cut our losses, and, you know, we can get some shock out of it early on. We might see some stuff with the Sand Snake, you know. We might see some stuff with, you know, with Dorne still here and there. But I think my guess is that they are cutting their losses with Dorne, and that they were just like, okay, this plot's not working. It's not going well. You know, we need to shake it up. So even if it's not completely over, I think it's going to be largely diminished, even more so than its role was last season.
How the fuck were they able to pull that off? Like, I'm trying to think of time-wise. They were on the docks, the boat goes, then they kill, you know, whatever his name, guy in the guy with gout.
Well, it wasn't the same ones that killed, was it?
No, yeah, it was that. That was Mama Snake with her kids.
Yeah, but Mama Snake wasn't at King's Landing to kill Trystane.
Wait, he was in. Hold on, no. End of last season, they were just leaving Dorne. Marcella dies.
Yes.
So 2 of the snakes stay behind to kill Gout Man. And then, thank you. And then the other 2 stayed on the boat.
No, but that's the problem, is those other 2 weren't on the boat. And in the last shot at the end of the season
they weren't on the boat at all. They were on the dock.
They were on the dock. So
how the frick would they have caught up with it?
Exactly. And that's the problem that people have. And like I said, that plot hole even more so makes me think that this was not the original plan for Dorne, and that this was kind of emergency mode.
No, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Which is a shame. I mean, like, I could be completely wrong about that. It's definitely possible. But yeah, that was interesting. And I mean, that does really complicate things, because Dorne did have some important stuff that it was working on in the books. And I'm curious how they're going to shift that around. You know, but we know that they're bringing in more Pike stuff this season. You know, they've got a lot of stuff going on. So maybe they're cutting their losses with Dorne. Like I said, we know we could see some other stuff here and there, but I don't know.
From a gut visceral reaction, I have a feeling that Dorne might be dead in the cradle. Well, it was dead in the cradle last season. Last season, it was just the most abysmal parts of season 5. And this first episode, like, you know, killing all the Martells, leaving only the Sand Snakes, you're just like, all right, so who's gonna rule now?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, because I think in some regard this was a very reflexive episode of Thrones, and I'm kind of torn on that, because it was definitely reflexive in a good way. You know, like, you know, like the Sand Snakes are taking control. Like, the show got a lot of flack last year for its treatment of female characters. And so I think this episode was on some levels a statement of, okay, this is what we can, you know, this is what our female characters can do. But I almost feel like it was a little too reactionary for its own good. And I think Doran's a perfect example of that, where they were just like, okay, well, we're just going to kill everyone, and it's not really going to make any sense, but look now the Sand Snakes are in charge. And you know what I mean? Like, and there's a way to be reactive to complaints about the show without being so reactive that it's just turning into giving people exactly what they want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to say that people didn't have legitimate concerns and criticisms of the show. I think a lot of those last season were largely overblown, um, or were made by people who haven't been watching the show from the beginning, which is another theory of mine. But I digress. But yeah, like it felt a little bit like the show, like this episode was more of a statement of purpose instead of an organic continuation of the plots that we've seen before, if that makes sense. Um, and I think that, I don't know, and that is one thing, this ties into your point earlier, where the worst parts of last season were, for the most part, things that they invented whole cloth instead of adapting from the books. So there is some worry. We have some worries. Some worries for the rest of your days. It's a problem free. Okay. Anyways.
Yeah, I just feel as if they just kind of aborted it, like abort mission.
Yeah. Okay, turn around. This isn't working. People aren't liking it. Let's just, and I mean, I think, like I said, I think that's what they did. People aren't liking this. Let's kill it. We can shot like no.
It also
like,
felt really rushed because one of specifically the scene on the boat. Besides the fact of they got on the boat somehow. The two sand snakes and let's which one do you want to fight? Do you want to fight me or do you want to fight her? And you know obviously I was like, she's gonna he's walking right behind the one with the pole arm. He's gonna get stabbed through the fucking head like an idiot, and then he does. And that one snag is like, you're such a bitch, you know that? I'm like, did you lose your accent? You're an actress.
Yeah. I think unfortunately Dorn and the Sand Snakes are going to go into the category of the least well adapted things for this show.
Yeah, I mean, I might read the George Martin's books just for Dorn at this point.
Oh wait, you haven't read the books, Tim?
No, I've read the books. I'm just mean I might read the new ones when
they
come out.
Okay. I was gonna say, I was like, Tim, you.
I've lied for 6 years.
Yeah, I was like, you've read the books. What are you talking about?
No, I mean the new books when they come out eventually in 10 years.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe 10 years. So okay, so what else happened? What else happened this week? What else? Did anyone else die? I don't think we had any other deaths.
Not really. We random plebs died. We had the scene with Roose and Ramsay, and then we had Jaime Lannister and Cersei being like, "Yo, fuck everyone."
Ooh, I really liked Roose and Ramsay's scene.
I like Roose a lot.
I mean, Roose has always been great. And I don't know, they had some really good lines this episode. Like some good moments in it. And I think one of those was Roose's to Ramsay, where he was like, "Well, I'll have another son anyways. You're replaceable." And I mean, yeah.
It's one of the few times I've seen fear in Ramsay's eyes.
That's interesting. And it was kind of gruesome, but I did think there was something oddly poetic about him feeding that girl to the dogs.
Yeah.
It just seemed to, I was like, that's what Ramsay would do. Like that, yep. Like that, she was the kind, she ran those dogs in life, so that's what she's gonna do. But yeah, I'm curious, I don't know. I can't imagine. Are we going to see another battle? Is Ramsay going to now march on the wall? I don't know.
I don't think so. I don't think
so either.
I don't think anything of that is going to come to fruition. I think he's going to be busy with trying to reclaim Sansa, and that's going to be the main driving force for the Boltons this season until resurrected undead General Jon Snow marches from the wall with his army of wildlings. I mean, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm just saying that if that were to happen, that'd be kind of cool.
Interesting.
I just like to see the moment that Ramsay and Jon are fighting on the battlements of Winterfell, and Ramsay screams, "I'm gonna kill you," and Jon says, "I already died," and then skewers him through.
Tim, you're not supposed to be writing the show for them. We didn't. So we didn't see any of Bran this episode. We didn't see any of Littlefinger.
Which
We
I don't
did.
think we will for a while. I think they're going to spend most of their time with the main crew, like Danny in the Tyrion areas as well.
I mean, we do know that we're seeing Bran next episode.
Yeah, but I don't think we're going to see much of Littlefinger, is what I mean.
Oh, of Littlefinger. Yeah. No, I think you're probably right about that. But yeah, I do think. Oh, okay. No, sorry. Yes, let's jump to Tyrion and Danny. Across. Let's jump across the narrow sea. Well, we didn't get much. I mean, Tyrion and we
This
didn't get much of them.
we didn't get much of like a lot of people. We just kind of got
Yeah,
smatterings
just
everywhere.
got smatterings. I mean that's somewhat of their approach to openings sometimes. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's the same thing. We got a very, very brief look with Arya. Very brief.
And she got the shit beat out of her.
Dude, she's blind.
She still got the shit beat out of her.
That's true.
I have to tell you
again,
that
she's blind.
I mean, during that particular scene, I was watching a live feed of people's comments because I like doing that type of thing to myself just to see what people like how they were reacting. So many people were like, "Why is no one helping the blind girl?"
That's just not the type of place. They just don't. They they look away.
Yeah, they turn a blind eye. Da-da-da.
Oh.
Yeah. But here's the thing, with ignoring Tyrion for a little bit, but with Arya, like she's still training. She made a boo-boo last season, which
she's still training.
She's still training. It's very clear that the faceless men still are like, you know what? She fucked up. She knows that now. Let's beat the shit out of her until she learns how to fight blind. Basically, she's getting Batmaned. So.
Batman. That's the Batman song.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So what about Danny? What are your thoughts on? She's back with the horse. She's back with the bronies.
Yeah, the bronies are still loving horses. I think the bronies were definitely adorable. There was like it felt like when we left them as a war like a warring like hungry for like blood type people, and when we got back to them. They started a sitcom where 3 Dothraki writers just kind of like trade jokes about their favorite things in the world.
Oh, that was pretty good. The whole this is also really good. Like, okay, fine. It's one of the top 5. Yeah.
Naked women in my top 5 favorite things.
Yeah, this actually that's a good point, Tim. I'm glad you brought that up. This episode felt funnier than Thrones normally does. With that, there were I don't know. There was a couple other moments that I felt like had a little more humor, and I don't want to necessarily say light humor because I don't think it was light humor, but I think there were just more moments like that were funnier. There was a little, a little humorous tone,
a little cheer in every bite,
sprinkled in there. Especially. Given, and I think it was someone that I was watching the show with actually pointed this out, like, and this is again kind of endemic of some of the problems we've been talking about that we're worried about for the season. Is Danny was like, oh, I'm Danny, I'm queen, blah 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 of the Rhoyne and the Red Sea and Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter and I have silver hair, blah blah blah, and then they were like, okay, we don't believe you, and then she was like, oh no, but I lay with Drogo. And then they were like, oh, okay, we believe you now. And it was just like, wait, what?
Yeah, it's like okay. Your million titles meant nothing, but the fact that you slept with one Dothraki call, that made all the difference.
Well, and how do they know? They don't know. They don't know. I mean, this was actually, I had the similar problem, to jump way back. I had the similar problem with Brienne and Sansa. Sansa's at least was a little more rooted in the fact that she doesn't have a lot of fucking options left, and that now it's like, okay, well, I might as well go with Brienne because shit, who am I going to hang out with? Fucking Theon over here? Like, okay, yeah, like Brienne, yeah, great, sounds like a good idea. But
I just want to imagine Sansa being like, all right, do I want to hang with Dickless or Tall Girl over there?
but it's Dickless or Dickless. It's the choice between two Dicklesses. Like, what are you gonna do?
And then you have Podrick bringing the
Oh,
pain.
it was pretty good seeing Podrick. That was pretty good.
Yeah, just a little.
That was pretty good.
I love the nickname Tripod. Internet, thank you for that.
Oh God.
He wields 3 swords.
Tripod.
Well, one of them is his penis.
But yeah, so that was kind of weird with Dany, and yeah, it looks like she's gonna go to the Dothraki homeland, and I think we actually saw some of what is it, Vos Dothrak? Is that Vos Dothrak? We saw some of that, I believe, in some of the trailers, and if memory serves me correctly, you actually see it in the books originally when she first meets up with the Dothraki. I feel like they make a stop there, but I could be wrong. I don't remember for sure. They stop at some Dothraki city.
Isn't she going to a retirement home? Is that why they're going there, if I recall?
Yes, that's essentially what they said is, well, okay, glad we found you, but wives of, dead Drogos need to go over here and chill and be an old retirement home lady. Yeah.
I find it really weird that they have just a retirement home for like dead Cull's wives.
You know, the thing that I find weird is that the only rule they seem to have is don't fuck someone that another cow's fucked.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really just an interesting nugget of culture for the Dothraki, who kill and fuck and rape and steal and give no fucks. They're the absolute epitome of no fuck culture. But their one rule is bros before hoes.
I cannot figure out for the life of me, like, who was the Dothraki call at the time that came up with some of the actual rules? He's like, all right, guys, but seriously, no fucking each other's wives.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. No wife fucking.
I'm just imagining it was like, Cull boring. Like all the other Dothraki are just like, God, this guy's awful. He just makes rules.
Cull boring. Oh man.
To be fair, he probably was the most enlightened Dothraki there was, because they kind of need rules to not, rape and pillage and kill. And
that is true. But yeah, it's interesting. The AV Club pointed out the similarities between Dany kind of being enslaved, her plot now, and the plot that they skipped of Tyrion's in the book, or in the show from the book, which was Tyrion being imprisoned for a very long time on his way to Meereen. So I thought that was interesting, and yeah, I mean, I think this was someone else that I was watching the show with too, that posed this question, or I guess it wasn't really a question, but it was more of, man, Dany just can't catch a break. She's moving from worse to worse to worse, and I kind of combated that with, well, she hasn't learned how to make a good decision yet. She's made bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. So of course, like what do you expect? But I thought that was an interesting comment, because I do think that one of the things that Thrones does miraculously well is it takes characters like Dany, who at the beginning, I feel like she's the perfect heroine in a lot of people's eyes, and it kind of twists that trope a little bit, where you realize that, well, just that doesn't mean she's going to be a good king. And I mean that's the question that's central to a lot of Thrones theology is, what does it take to be a good king?
I also think that we're going to have a moment with Dany where we realize she's not that great. Other than the fact that she's a terrible ruler, is that, okay, so in my gut, there's always one crazy Targaryen. There's always one. I still think it's Dany.
Well, I think that's possible, but my larger point was it's interesting because the book really does that very well, where it builds Dany up and then it spends, the rest of the series making you realize she wouldn't be good for the throne.
Yeah.
But then it does the opposite with characters like Jaime, who you hate at the beginning, and then who it slowly tries to redeem. Both the book and the show also try to do that with Cersei to, I think, a much lesser success rate.
Well, I think I saw a really good reaction to the scene where Cersei finds out from Jaime that Myrcella's dead. Is that somebody posted on Reddit, Season 1, how can anyone ever find anything pitiable about the Lannisters? Season 6, oh!
Yeah. Yeah, and in the after show, in the brief little after show segment for this episode, they talked about that, about how that was Cersei's lowest moment. Like, it wasn't her march. It was learning that Myrcella was dead. And I thought it was interesting that they brought that prophecy back. I'm curious if anyone remembers that prophecy way back from, because that was how last season opened, wasn't it? Didn't
Yeah.
it opened with the flashback of Cersei. And so I thought it was interesting that they brought that back, that they actually connected that. But yeah, I don't know. So I'll be curious to see what they do this season, because I think that Dany and Tyrion are still very much, fan favorite characters from the show. And I mean, I don't know. I'm actually surprised that Tyrion has remained likable despite the fact that he killed his father and Shae. I thought audiences were going to have a much harder time swallowing that pill than has seemed to happen. And I mean, it might have helped that the show hasn't really done anything in its way of condemning him for that either, necessarily. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that when you kill Tyrion, Tywin Lannister, people don't really give a shit.
Well, I mean, that's also a fair point. That's also a really good. That's also a fair point. It's not the fact that he killed. It doesn't matter because of who it was that he killed. That's a good point, actually. I hadn't thought of that. But yeah, so it'll be interesting what they do with both Dany and Tyrion. I'm excited because, Tyrion, ruling is what Tyrion does best, and
he's the perfect bureaucrat.
I mean, he is, and the show hasn't quite done him the same in-depth service that the books does on some of this stuff. But if you really closely play attention, you still see it. When he was Hand of the King, he did a really good job. And if you look all the way back to season 3, the victory at Blackwater, the show gave it to Cersei, that it was her idea for the wildfire, but that was Tyrion's doing. And he's smart, and Meereen is a clusterfuck. It's a clusterfuck in the book and the show.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I remember when Meereen, when they first entered, didn't look half bad, and I remember watching this episode, I was just like, didn't Meereen look better? It looks like a shithole. And then all the ships were on fire. I'm like, it's a really big shithole.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just Dany hasn't done it any favors. And this is the lesson that Dany still hasn't learned after all these cities she's gone to, is you can't, and it's an interesting debate. It's an interesting thought. It's an interesting conversation to have, is if, Dany is essentially coming in. I mean, it's an interesting statement on imperialism in general. I think all of the books seep with critique on imperialism, where she's taking over this culture and saying, okay, well, slavery's wrong, all this stuff's wrong, and all the people are saying, but this is the only life we've ever known. Like, what are we supposed to do now? Like, the slaves want to be slaves again, and so. This is, I'm not a proponent of slavery by any means, but it's an interesting look at what happens when there's cultural differences within a society, and Dany is trying to impose hers through rule of force. And she's learning, I hope, that is not a recipe for success.
Well,
which
she has the issue that congratulations, Danny, you've abolished slavery. Now, what are the slaves going to do? They don't have
exactly,
jobs.
exactly. Like what are you going to do? And this is something that she hasn't learned in the past few cities she's been in, but that she will hopefully learn before she makes it. If she makes it to Westeros.
I still don't think she's going to learn it. I think that Tyrion's going to fix it, and she's not going to learn from it. She might like have a moment with Tyrion where Tyrion's like, "Well, yes, I established some monument building programs in honor of the Targaryens, and that gave jobs to the slaves of Meereen. So they are now free people who have jobs that are being paid by the state treasury, which is
Mm.
increasing the local economy. And yes, Marines all better now. Why, thank you." And Danny might have that moment where she's like, "Wow, thank you very much. I've learned a lesson about leadership because you went further for the people than I ever did." And then she'll immediately forget it.
Yeah, I think that yeah, that's highly probable. I do want to say just a little bit because I'm trying. I'm sprinkling in background knowledge. Now that this is completely, I don't have to worry about spoilers. But one thing that I don't think the show has mentioned that is just a little tidbit of history from Tyrion's backstory is that his first job was running the sewers in Casterly Rock. And it was kind of a shitty job that his dad gave him. But everyone always talks about how he he did such a good job managing that project that it led to everything else for him. And so he's really good at fixing complex problems. That's what he does. There's a reason that people think that he'd be good on the throne. He probably would be. He'd probably be the best of anyone. But that would mean another Lannister on the throne, and a lot of people don't want to see that, and even his fellow brother and sister don't necessarily want to see that at the moment.
Or at the moment, they're probably not. They probably kill him.
Yeah. So is there any we'll wrap up with Melisandre. Is there any other
Nothing really burning. No.
Okay, no, that's good. If something was burning, you'd probably want to get that checked out.
Yeah, just a little bit. Some soothing. Well, Bernie Sanders was in town, and I felt that burn.
Feel the burn.
Did not win in New York. Did not win.
I know, we can't. Let's not get into that.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah. So we ended with Melisandre, and this was another area. I think I saw a lot of people commenting on this, how they felt that this was the show, kind of winking and nodding to the fans that just watch it for the nudity. Where it's like, okay, here she is naked, boom, creepy old lady.
I think it was actually really funny how many people commented how they are absolutely disgusted, or their penis inverted, or their vagina exverted, or whatever your joy bits were. They were not in joy mode at that present time. But I think it was interesting because old lady, old man, doesn't matter what it is. Old naked person apparently is a universal sign for, can we not? Like, apparently there were more people upset about that than like the gratuitous violence in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I mean, with that there's a thesis in that somewhere, and I'm not going to get on my soapbox, but violence. One of the major problems with violence and sex in America is the level of acceptance to which violence is accepted, but that sex and stuff is not.
Yeah.
And that's just
and one is a lot better for your mental health. And it's not violence.
That's very true. But yeah, I thought this was interesting. I'm trying to find the AV Club link to an article that I still haven't been able to get to open, that apparently mentions some rationale behind her being this old. And in the behind the scenes at the end of the episode, D&D actually mentioned that, hey, we in talking with Martin, he told us how old Melisandre is, and this is kind of where we got the idea from. So it's definitely an interesting idea. I mean, this is one area where the show was being really, really symbolic here, and was kind of asking a lot of its readers to piece together what's going on. She's looking at herself in the mirror. Okay, maybe it's not subtle. It's also very over the head. she's completely stripped of everything. She doubts herself.
She doubts
But
her God most of all.
yeah, but I'm actually really excited because I think that like a Melisandre with self-doubt is a very interesting character.
Well, that's because she's never had that up until now.
Exactly. She has been operating under complete assumption that everything she does is right, and that she's had no reason to doubt herself before now.
Well,
And yeah,
here's my major thing with the Melisandre, if you don't mind me grabbing the wheel.
take it.
So, Melisandre has always wondered in like some of the wonderful miracles that Thoros of Myr has been able to perform under the guidance of the Lord of Light. Thoros of Myr, mind you, wasn't always a true believer of R'hllor. He
Yeah.
didn't give a shit. He like went around and he swindled people.
He was a drunk. He was a drunk. Yeah, he didn't. Yeah.
And he never believed in it. And then one random day, Derek Bombarian or Beric Dondarrion shows up.
There you go.
Dies, and he resurrects him. He didn't really believe in his God. He doubted it, R'hllor completely, but through his own doubt, was able to perform a miracle that made him believe even stronger. Melisandre has never really, in her 400-year-old life, had that moment. She's always been a blind believer of the Red God, and I think this is her moment to doubt him. And then in the moment of doubt, she's going to have a moment that's going to bring her to greater belief. And out of all the gods that the Game of Thrones has brought before us, R'hllor seems to be the only one that has an active ability in the universe.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Ish. I'm actually not sure. I'm not sure if they're going to resolve her doubt right away.
I think that if
that's
her
my
doubt,
thought. I think this is something she's going to struggle with over the course of this season.
I would agree, but I would also have to say that something's going to like if her doubt becomes part of what brings her to trying to res Jon Snow, then that's going to have to happen sooner. She can still doubt the Red God, but
that's true.
She's going to like I think it will be she'll have a down moment and then she'll be brought back up, but she'll still be wary.
That's true.
It honestly completely matters on if things are tied together. If Jon and her have absolutely zero to do with each other, then she can doubt all season. Doesn't matter.
That's true. But if it's based on Jon, I mean, here's the question. Here's my hypothetical I'm going to throw out to you. Is there a way for her to revive Jon but still hold doubt? Because if so, that's what I would place my money on.
It would be exactly how Thoros of Myr did the first time. He did not believe in his God and was able to perform the miracle the first time. And I think he says, I'm not sure if it's in the show or in the book, that he still wasn't sure what happened. But he didn't come to full belief until Beric died a couple more times. And it's like, all right, well, this seems to be working out pretty okay.
Yeah, so maybe she goes around reviving Jon for the next, couple of seasons.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the abilities that the Red God can impart in somebody. Apparently also with the ability to cast illusions.
Yeah, that's true. I do want to make sure we fit in. We're running a little over at this point, but I do want to fit in one thing about the show itself that I'm curious to get your opinion on, Tim. That's not specifically this episode, but there's actually I don't think it's a rumor at this point. I think they've come out and directly said it, that they want to do shorter seasons for the last 2 seasons. That they'll have 10 episodes for this one, and then seasons 7 and 8 will both be shorter run seasons, which means we're getting close. We're getting close to the end. So
makes me a little bit nervous.
I'm curious your thoughts on that.
I honestly think it is okay for them to do shorter seasons if they're going to do those shorter seasons really well. If the shorter season means that if they still have the budget of a longer season, but for a shorter season, that means that they're going to do something ridiculous for that both those seasons. That there's going to be more effects, more
that's a good point.
more of a budget. Now, if they're doing it for a cash grab and they're not going to actually change any of the formula, or they're not going to change like how their process works now, then I think it's a complete waste of time. And then they should just go like they're just trying to pad it out. But honestly, I think the choice probably is being made on the level that if we have shorter seasons, we have more of a like we're already budgeted for this. Like if we make them shorter seasons, we can use that budget for this season, and then we can have more.
I mean, that's true. I mean, if you look at something like, the big battles and stuff, I mean, it's no, those episodes were finished like right up against their deadline. And, were very expensive. My theory is I'm wondering if they're doing this because of, not just because of Bran, but because of the actors in general. And they want to film it all at once because it's getting so expensive to keep everyone locked in for 2 summers in a row. So instead they'll try to film all of the last 2 seasons this summer and then have it all done and then spend 2 years working on it and putting it together.
That's entirely an option as well.
That's my thought. But I like your idea, and I think I agree with that. Like yeah, like on the one hand, the more thrones the better normally. But there's at least a couple episodes in each season that probably could have been removed, or at least episodes worth of material that could have been removed, and it wouldn't have made a huge difference. And
I think that these final 2 seasons are going to be so massive that they're going to need the time to process them.
Well, and I mean, I think some of it is too is it allows them to tell a tighter story, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah. It's never a bad thing to tell a really good story, even if it's the last 2 seasons that you're going to be doing it for.
Yeah, that's true. So,
like,
cool. Well, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just like, my gut's like, I can't believe it's almost over.
Yeah. Well, 2 years. I mean, 2018 it looks like, so.
I'm going to be out of a job, man.
Yeah, what are we going to do? We'll find something.
Maybe Dunking the Egg.
I still have to read that, actually.
It's funny.
Yeah, I have to give that a read. But okay, cool. So, any other thoughts, Tim? Or we good till next week? Cool, perfect. Well, thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Willie.
Awesome. And yeah, we'll be back next week with more on Game of Thrones. And yeah, let us know. We listen. What your thoughts are on like if you love the podcast and only watch the show and absolutely didn't want spoilers and you're now mad, let us know. And we can revise, but we wanted to try this for this week and see how people took it.
Also, let us know what you were eating before you saw Lady Melisandre change.
Yes, indeed. So, okay, well, have a good week, everyone. We will be back next week. Until then, peace.
Goodbye.